the New Hampshire Constitution should be relevant in a New Hampshire court, especially with the witness who swore to uphold said document.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.
Are you ready to proceed?
Yes, I'm the State Council representing Holbrook.
I just want to make sure I have the keep going up. Yeah, just swear in.
Okay, if you can please raise your hand and swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is not the truth and the truth. Okay,
Before you start, I have 3 complaints. One alleges failure to obtain a New Hampshire license. There's a service complaint. This is the same service?
yes, I have filed a replacement with court.
And then, so that's one complaint, and then there's one unregistered vehicle. Is that the other one?
Yes, that's the second.
Both from the same date and time?
That's true.
Okay. All right.
Can you please state your full name and spell your last for the record?
Timothy Peloquin, P-E-L-O-Q-U-I-N.
And how are you employed, sir?
The City of Keene, Police Department.
And are you employed as a police officer?
Yes.
And for how long have you been so employed?
From April of 1987 through the present.
And are you a certified law enforcement officer?
I am.
And drawing your attention to November 5th of 2013, at about 1:30 in the afternoon, were you on duty for the Keene Police Department?
I was.
And at about that time, were you in full uniform and operating car control?
I was.
About that time, where were you, if you recall, and what if any particular vehicle caught your attention?
I was on Island Street, headed from the Winchester Street end toward the West Street end. And there was a small white car in front of me with a Texas plate that was long since expired at the ranch.
And based on that, what did you do?
I pulled the car over in the car stop, spoke with Darryl, the registered owner and operator of the vehicle.
And that was on Island Street?
That was on Island Street.
And the state rests with what team commission notice that Island Street is a way administered?
All right, I'm being asked to take notice of it's common knowledge that Island Street is no objection. Okay.
And you indicated that you had made contact with the driver, that was Mr. Darryl Perry.
Yes.
Do you recognize him in the courtroom today?
See the defendant's table.
For the record, and were you able to identify him just by sight or additionally by other means?
Well, I'm on some level familiar with Mr. Perry, so I knew that it was Perry, and that he provided me the Arizona driver's license, I believe.
And can you describe what any conversation you had with him?
I spoke with Mr. Perry both about the vehicle being unregistered and his license status. In fact, if my recollection is correct, the registration expired 20 months ago at the time of the stop. And he had some correspondence from the state of Texas that they had mailed him that reminded him to register his car some 20 months previous. We discussed briefly, and I don't even know that there was much of a discussion about it, Mr. Perry's status as a resident of this city and state. Then, based on that, I went back to the cruiser, ran everything, and came back and issued him summonses for an unregistered motor vehicle and failure of a New Hampshire resident to obtain a New Hampshire license.
And briefly, you indicated you were familiar with the defendant, and is that correct?
Yes.
And how are you familiar with him?
I have met Mr. Perry several times in the past.
And are you aware that he's affiliated with a particular group that's local to Keene?
I am.
And what group is that?
Well, in all fairness, I think there's probably several, but I'm going to guess we're talking about the Free Keene movement.
Is that relevant to this case?
I think it's in part relevant to his status as a resident in New Hampshire, the fact that he's involved in a local organization.
Okay.
Do you wish to answer?
Well, I'm familiar with Mr. Perry. I've spoke with him before. I know I shouldn't say I know, but he's blogs or is part of the Free Keene movement on some level.
And did you have occasion to view a certified copy of his Texas motor vehicle record, and specifically where it addresses the registration of the vehicle that he was driving that day?
Yes.
And just to be clear, do you recall specifically what type of vehicle it was?
I believe it was a little white Nissan Sentra.
Seek to enter states as it belongs to the copy of his Texas motor vehicle record.
Any objection?
No objection. Enters the state's exhibit 1, is that in fact a certified copy of the defendant's motor vehicle record out of the state of Texas?
Yes, it is.
Does that confirm that on the date of your stop, that his registration on the vehicle he was driving was in fact suspended, or expired rather?
Yes.
And on what date did that registration expire?
March of 2012.
Does it also indicate when it was issued?
It was issued on April 6th of 2011.
And did you also have an occasion to view, and you could just put that right up on the, down there. Did you also have an occasion to view a certified copy of a letter of verification from the New Hampshire DMV showing that he does not in fact have a New Hampshire driver's license?
Yes.
Objection?
No objection.
See what you did, that is Exhibit 2. Mr. Duncan, and the State's Exhibit 2, is that in fact a letter of verification from the New Hampshire Department of Motor Vehicles that you're holding?
Yes, it is.
And does that verify that the defendant does not hold a New Hampshire driver's license in the state?
That is correct.
And did you also have an occasion to view a certified copy of the defendant's Arizona motor vehicle record and license status?
Yes.
See the Andrew.
Any objection?
None.
Mr. Cullen, I'm going to move that the State's Exhibit 3 is that a certified copy of the defendant's Arizona motor vehicle record.
Yes, it is.
And does it indicate on what date he obtained a driver's license in Arizona and whether in fact it's current and perhaps the expiration date as well?
The license was issued on July 10th of 2009, and it is valid or expires on February 7th of 2019.
And actually, I'm going to draw your attention.
That's actually the incorrect information.
This,
Hang on a second.
if I could, yeah.
On, what's the issue?
You read the incorrect information.
And
If I could just direct your attention to where you just read on the bottom, does that indicate that that's his South Carolina driver's license?
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. It does say South Carolina.
Okay, so those are the dates for when his South Carolina driver's license was issued and then when it expired.
Correct.
And looking at top of that document, does it indicate when his Arizona driver's license?
I'm sorry. It does. December 10th of 2010 with an expiration date February 7th of 2043.
Thank you. And just looking at page 2 of that document, is that a photograph of the defendant that appears on his Arizona driver's license?
It certainly appears to be.
Maybe you can just put that on top. And are you aware that the defendant has run for local offices, and in particular here, are you aware that he's run to be the ward moderator as recently as August of 2013?
Yes.
Objection, relevance?
This goes to what?
It goes to show that he is a resident in the state of New Hampshire by his active involvement in local positions.
Based on a court ruling from the Stratford County Superior Court that was issued on the 24th of July, running for office does not make one a resident. Neither does registering to vote.
Can I have a copy of
I
that?
haven't seen a copy of that. Mr. Perry has not shared that with me. I guess I'd like to have an opportunity to read this multiple page document. If the court's going to...
Is that an extra copy?
Yes.
All right. I guess I'm assuming it's in the form of a motion to dismiss is what you're making at some point? Or
No, this is a court ruling that was released by the Stratford County Superior Court on Thursday of last week.
The testimony is relevant. That doesn't mean that they proved that aspect. To be able to argue the law with respect to that decision in any case is cited in there, but I think that the testimony is relevant to residency, at least at this stage of the proceeding.
State would seek to enter as State's Exhibit 4 a copy of this declaration.
Did you say you had an extra copy for the court? Did you say?
Yes.
Okay, I don't need it just yet, but hang on to it. This is where number 4.
Councilor Collins, can you enter the State's Exhibit 4? Is that a certified copy from the City of Keane's clerk's office showing that the defendant did in fact declare his candidacy for the particular position for ward moderator?
Yes.
And on what date was that?
Appears to have been received on August 21st, 2013.
And what address does Mr. Perry write is his domicile on that particular document?
75 Leverett Street.
And that's a key.
There is a 75 Leverett Street in Keene.
And does that first, if you could just hold to the first page, does that indicate that he withdrew that particular race?
There is a note that says, I wish to withdraw from the Ward 4 moderator's race, signed by Darryl Perry.
And what term, just briefly, was the ward moderator position?
What term?
For what term of years was that position?
It's a 2-year term.
And are you familiar on the same date that he withdrew his declaration of candidacy for that position, and he also declared his candidacy for the position of mayor?
Yes.
They would seek to enter State Exhibit 5.
I understand your objection, but otherwise, any other objection?
No.
So number 5.
Councilor Hall, continue with the State's Exhibit 5. Is that a certified copy from the City of Keene clerk's office showing that the defendant filed that particular document specifically as a declaration of candidacy last year?
Yes.
And what date was that?
Well, the date that I see here is September 6, 2013.
And what address is listed on that declaration?
75 Leverett Street.
And how long was, according to that document, what is the term for mayor?
The mayor is a 2-year term.
And have you also viewed a certified copy of the defendant's voter registration form that's on file at the city of Keene clerk's office?
Yes.
Any objection?
None. Other than the standing objection
Yes.
about voter
Yes.
registration, none.
Understood.
Mr. Paulson, I'm handing you is the Evidence Deeds Exhibit 6. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
And what is it?
It's a New Hampshire voter registration form.
And is that for the defendant, Mr. Perry?
It is
And what address does he list as his residence?
75 Leverett Street in Keene, New Hampshire.
Objection, it says domicile, not residence.
In fact, this says residence address.
And then what
Do
date?
you have a copy of that one?
He does. And then what date?
Answer.
I stand corrected.
And on what date did he complete that paperwork?
This appears to be May 10th, 2012.
And are you aware that the defendant has answered questionnaires by our local paper because he's run for several public offices and local positions?
Yes, I am.
And have you viewed copies of those questionnaires that he's completed?
I have.
And are you aware that he's run for the County Register of Deeds back in 2012?
Yes,
And have you viewed that in a questionnaire that he
I
completed?
have.
Objection.
None other than the standing.
Yes, that's you don't have to mention that again. It's on the record. 7?
Yes. I'm handing you a document that's been entered as State's Exhibit 7, and can you indicate what that document is?
This appears to be a copy of the standard type questionnaire that appears in the Sentinel, the Keene Sentinel, whenever there's elections, where they basically ask all of the folks involved in the process to answer a list of questions.
And are the general questions, what are his goals if he were to be a registrar of deeds in Keene? What types of questions are that?
Relevant?
Until I hear the answer, I don't know.
Well, it asks his party affiliation, how long he's lived in the area, his education, his occupation.
And does it indicate how long he's lived in the area?
It appears that Mr. Perry responded with, I arrived in Keene on April 4th of 2012.
And could you also,
There's a requirement here that you have to be here at least 60 days, so it's relevant for any particular time frame.
Okay.
are you also familiar with Mr. Perry running to become a school board member in the city of Keene?
Yes,
And have you viewed an interview that he's, or a questionnaire that he's answered similar to the one that you just looked at by Mr. Perry?
yes, I have.
Any objection other than the ongoing one?
None.
Number 8.
Mr. Paul, can you review the appendix to 8? Can you go to court with that document, please?
Again, it appears to be a Sentinels standard questionnaire of the people involved in that. And this is the Keene Board of Education questionnaire, answered by Darryl Perry.
And does it also indicate what if a local group memberships he's involved in on that, the questionnaire?
It doesn't ask local group memberships and positions held.
And what is his response?
That he is on Cheshire TV and has been from 2012 through, this is posted March 1st of 2013. So it says 2012 through the present.
And finally, did you also view a questionnaire that he answered which corresponded to his run for mayor?
Yes.
Let's take a seat to enter Exhibit 9. Exhibit 9, is that a questionnaire that he completed in regards to his run for mayor most recently in September of 2013?
Yes.
And does he indicate on that questionnaire what, if any, other affiliations in New Hampshire or in Cheshire County he's affiliated with that you haven't already testified to?
Let's see. Lava founder, lifelong member, ballot access.
Pardon me?
The organization is LAVA. New Hampshire Liberty Party, co-founder, co-chair, Zero Aggression Project, Second Amendment Foundation, Libertarian Party, Cheshire TV, Downsize DC, Firearms Order Against Crime, Free State Project, Ballot Access Fairness Coalition, Deny Concept. I think I said New Hampshire Liberty Party.
And does that questionnaire ask questions about what his sites or visions are for specifically the city of Keene in New Hampshire?
It does.
And I won't make you get into those, but he does in fact respond to what his goals are for the city of Keene. Is that right?
He does.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Perry, any questions for Mr. Pelican?
Oh, yes, I do. Officer Pelican, are these criminal or civil charges?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that really. They're motor vehicle charges. So they are not criminal charges in that they're not misdemeanors.
Are you alleging that I have harmed someone in some way?
I didn't say that at all.
Sorry, he answered it, no? It's not relevant, but go ahead.
You said that you are familiar with me, and you cited several ways in which you knew who I was. Would you call me a political activist?
I wouldn't call you, I'm not sure what to call you. I mean, my dealings with you have been pleasant enough and non-confrontational. So I'm not sure you're even thinking, how's that?
Okay. On November 5th, let's just focus on the, pullover for a moment. On November 5th, was I violating the posted speed limit on Island Street?
No.
Was I traveling in an unsafe manner?
No.
Was I operating a vehicle in a manner that could somehow be hazardous to others?
No.
When you turned on your lights, what street were you on?
I believe it was on Island Street.
Were there any vehicles between me and you when you turned on your lights?
I have no idea. I don't recall that at all.
Did you do a call in to dispatch to run my plate before turning on your lights to pull me over?
I believe I ran your plate right in the car, right in the cruiser on the We call it an MDT, the mobile data terminal.
Before or after you turned on your lights?
Before.
Did you swear an oath to the New Hampshire Constitution?
I'm sure I did.
Would you say that you are familiar with the document?
What portion?
The New Hampshire Constitution should be relevant in a New Hampshire court, especially with the witness who swore to uphold said document.
Well, there's no, right, as it stands now, there's no pleading alleging a constitutional violation. If you're going to allege one here, you need to be specific. That's all the objection really is aimed at.
Permission to approach the witness with a copy of the New Hampshire Constitution?
Let's deal with the objection first. What provision of the Constitution are you alleging is violated here?
Specifically, Part 1, Article 19, Part 1, Article 3, and Part 1, Article 10.
And what about them?
Part 1, Article 19 is a prohibition against unreasonable searches and seizures.
You filed no motion to suppress prior to the hearing, so you don't have an issue there.
Part 1, Article 3 is titled Society, Its Organization, and Purpose. And Part 1, Article 10 is the right to revolution.
Right. Well, you can argue those as part of your closing statement, as whether you think this is a violation. If it creates matters of law, it should have to be researched. We'll have to deal with that at the end of the case.
Okay. So it would be inappropriate to cite or to have the witness read Part 1, Article 19?
I think it would be inappropriate. It's not inappropriate for you to turn to the Constitution if you think it supports your case once the facts are all in.
Okay. Did you have reason to run my vehicle registration?
I did.
And what was that reason?
At some point, and I don't remember exactly when, I'm going to guess because of the perceived infamy, notoriety, whatever value folks place on the group you belong to, or one of them. Somebody had called and complained that your vehicle had been long unregistered.
Was this an anonymous complaint?
Yeah, I don't remember where it was, or it might have even been in an email that somebody called in. I don't recall where.
When you pull people over for expired registrations, do you always issue a ticket or do you sometimes issue warnings? It's very relevant.
Why is it relevant for me to determine whether or not you needed to be given a citation?
I would say that it's relevant insofar as to show that I was being singled out, especially since he cited an anonymous complaint.
You can answer the question as to whether or not you sometimes give citations, sometimes you don't.
Sometimes I do, sometimes I do not. And the important qualifier there is this. If somebody has simply forgotten and we're within a week or two, I oftentimes ask that person to go take care of that immediately. If it's more than that in the month area, I may issue them a summons and tell them that they have a week to come back and see me, because the responsibility to register that car is theirs, not mine. And if they come back, I may take that summons back. But your vehicle was 20 months, if my math was correct, unregistered at that point. So that falls well outside of my compassion, and it has nothing to do with who you are or the perception or the initial complaint. And particularly when you showed me the letter from the state of Texas reminding you to register your car, 20 months is just unacceptable. That's why you got a ticket.
And you cited me for violating RSA 261:40, correct?
Correct, unregistered motor vehicle.
What proof, if any, do you have to support the claim that I was actually operating a vehicle in violation of RSA 261:40?
What proof?
What physical proof? Do you have any evidence?
Correct, yes. I watched you drive the car. You were driving the car on the street. I stopped you when you were driving the car. We talked about you driving the car. You provided me the documentation from the state of Texas and your Arizona license, where you sat in the car, and in fact, your colleague at the camera back there came running across the Colorado parking lot while you were in the car and may have videotaped it.
Okay, that's verbal testimony, that's not physical evidence. You have pictures of me in the vehicle. You have video of me driving the vehicle.
You may have video of you driving the vehicle, I do not.
Now, let's go to the charge that, or actually 2 charges, that I am a New Hampshire resident. Can you take a look at the New Hampshire voter registration form that is sitting next to you? I don't remember which exhibit that is, but it's 2 sheets.
Number 6.
Can you look at page 2 of that document? And now look back at page 1. Do you notice a difference in the handwriting on those 2 pieces of paper?
Not at all.
Can you look at the exhibit where I withdrew from the Ward 4 moderator's race? And then again, look at the voter registration form from May 10th of 2012. Do you notice a difference in the handwriting on those 2 documents?
I would say,
Is this number 4?
I'm sorry, 4 and 6, Your Honor, yes, sir, that the signature is too difficult to tell.
Yeah, not the signature, the printed wording.
The printed writing that does appear, in fact, to be different enough to make it clear it's different.
So it is possible that based on one document that you know that I wrote and one document that I have signed, it is possible that I did not actually fill out the top portion of information on the voter registration form.
I have no idea what you...
But it's possible.
You can explain any answer.
Okay.
I don't know what is your writing and what not. So
But you do acknowledge that it's 2 different handwritings that are used.
outside of the signature,
Aside from the signature.
it does appear different.
Are you aware of all of the statutes on residency?
I am familiar on some level with a number of the residency statutes.
RSA 259:88. Does that statute ring a bell?
It comes out of
Oh,
line.
a legal question.
I don't know if it does or not. I'm going to look it up myself. This is the definition section.
259:88, yes, is definitions.
It's relevant. I'm going to show this, Dan.
Yes, please.
Words and phrases.
Can you read that for the court, please?
259:88, which is titled Resident, is out of the Motor Vehicle Code section. It says resident shall mean a resident of the state as defined in RSA 21:6, except that no person shall be deemed to be a resident who claims residence in any other state for any purpose.
Is residency something that someone chooses?
Yeah, this, I mean, you can argue, these are things I think you can reserve for argument later. This witness isn't going to engage in a battle over the definitions here. You can make, but you can make all those arguments at the end. Yeah.
Do you know whether or not I claim residency in any other state for any purpose?
I have no idea.
You testified that we had a brief conversation when you stopped me about whether or not I was a resident or an inhabitant, correct?
Correct.
And you actually wrote down on your officer notes for, or actually I believe it is on the, I'm not sure if it was the officer notes for the resident charge or if it was the replacement complaint, but there is an officer note that you have made.
Thanks, I would put a check around hearsay if it's being offered by the defendant of anything that he said.
Well, it's in his officer notes that have been introduced.
Just for purposes of the objection, why don't you tell me what it says there? If it's considered hearsay, then I'll let you know. If not, we can go on.
You have written it, and I would like the witness to read this, but it says, not a resident, I'm an inhabitant.
Mr. Perry, tell me what it said. It said, this is what you say you said. Is that what you're saying?
This is what he wrote in his officer notes. He put, not a resident, I am an inhabitant. And you have, not a resident, I'm an inhabitant in quotes.
So is the question whether he wrote that or whether he wrote down what you said?
The question is whether or not he wrote this and if he recalled the conversation.
You can answer whether you wrote that, and you can also answer why you wrote that.
I do, and that was the conversation we had. We discussed, and you offered that you were not a resident, you were an inhabitant, that's why it's in quotes. And I believe when we parted politely and quietly, the end comment from me was that the court would have to decide that.
And again, going back to RSA 259:88, it says that any person that claims residency in any other state for any purpose is not a New Hampshire resident, correct?
It does.
Are you aware of the case from about a year and a half ago, City of Keene versus Ian Freeman, regarding a residency charge?
If this is a legal question, if you could cite some other precedent from this or another court, again, you can reserve that for your argument about the case, but this is not relevant to his testimony.
I actually think that it might be, but I'll withdraw the question. Part 1, Article 10 of the New Hampshire Constitution says that the doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. This is in the section titled Right of Revolution. As a activist, I'll use the term to describe myself, even though you said you would not.
Mr. Parrish,
would you agree that
I have to interrupt you. If you're going to, it sounds like you're about to testify here.
I'm about to get to the question.
Okay, we'll get to the question.
Would you agree that I have a natural right of revolution in accordance with the New Hampshire Constitution?
It's not relevant. You may have that right, but it's not relevant to this case.
No further questions.
Okay, any redirect? Okay, you step down. Any other witnesses first?
Very realistic.
All right, state the rest of this case. Did you want to testify at this point, or did you want to submit the arguments on that case from, what county did you say it was from?
Stratford County.
Do you plan to testify, or do you want to just make,
I would.
make the legal arguments and then leave me with that case so I can take this under advisement?
Yeah, I would like the court to take judicial advisement of the case out of Stratford County, Anne Marie Guar v. State of New Hampshire, that was decided last Thursday. I have two other cases, both from federal courts,
that
I would like you to take judicial notice.
I take it you're not going to testify?
No, I do have a closing argument.
Okay. All right, why don't you do that first, and then we'll get to the other stuff. Go ahead.
The New Hampshire statutes on vehicle registration have several exemptions for people who are exempted from paying vehicle registration fees. Part 1, Article 10 of the New Hampshire Constitution says that governments are instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the whole community, and not for the private interest or emolument of any one man, family, or class of men. I would argue that since some people are given exemptions to vehicle registration fees, that either all should be given that exemption, or that the statutes are in violation of Part 1, Article 10. Article 2 of the New Hampshire Constitution, Part 1, Article 2, states that all men have certain natural, essential, and inherent rights. Article 4 expounds to state that among the natural rights, some are in their very nature unalienable, because no equivalent can be given or received for them. Of this kind are the rights of conscience. My conscience does not allow me to voluntarily comply with arbitrary power, and again, Article 10 states that to do so is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the common good and happiness of mankind. Additionally, Part 1, Article 3 of the New Hampshire Constitution states that when men enter into a state of society, they surrender some of their natural rights to that society in order to ensure the protection of others. Without such an equivalent, the surrender is void. I have federal court cases that I would like the state to take, or rather the court to take judicial notice of, that show where courts have ruled that there is no obligation to protect, and based on the New Hampshire Constitution, that would mean that any rights I supposedly surrendered are void.
No obligation to protect, you said?
Yes. Specifically the case out of the U.S. Supreme Court, DeShaney v. Winnebago County, and out of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals, Warren v. District of Columbia.
You have copies for everybody?
Yes, I've already given the state, I believe I've given the state copies. If not, here you go. I thought I did, apologies. Most people do not give vehicle registration a second thought. It is accepted as something that must be done. And while every state in the U.S. and District of Columbia has statutes mandating such registration, very few people ever ask the question, why must one register a vehicle? The simple answer is money, though a more complex answer involves a little background information. In 1892, the Massachusetts legislature passed a bill creating a commission of inquiry to report on the conditions of roads in the Commonwealth that were becoming congested with automobiles, horse-drawn carriages, and pedestrians. The commission reported that more than 90% of the roads were in poor condition and would only deteriorate with continual heavy unregulated use. This led the Massachusetts Highway Commission, this led to the creation of the Massachusetts Highway Commission, which became the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Their website actually says, quote, no laws were governing the rules of the road, which led to a great deal of confusion. In 1903, Massachusetts became the first state to issue a license and registration of plates for automobiles.
Mr. Perry, I'm going to interrupt. your argument is okay, you have to address the facts of this case, and you're strained considerably from the facts. No, just because it has something to do with road use or something like that doesn't mean it's appropriate argument here at this point.
In New Hampshire, and I'm getting to the point of New Hampshire. New Hampshire did not have vehicle registration until 1905, and at the time it was voluntary until 1909 when it became mandated. And again, I would like the court to take notice of the New Hampshire Constitution, specifically Part 1, Article 2, 3, 4, 10, and 19, which recognize my inherent rights, which I contend have been violated and continue to be violated. Additionally, on the residency charge, and I have it underlined in the case out of Stratford County on page 6, the court rules, quote, simply put, a citizen must be a domiciliary, but not necessarily a resident of New Hampshire in order to vote here. And the residency and domicile laws are conflicting in many ways, which does lead to confusion about whether or not a voter is necessarily a resident or simply a domiciliary.
Does that case address that conflict?
Yes, yes it does. That's actually, the entire case was over wording that was added to the voter registration form in 2012 that mandated, quote, in declaring New Hampshire as my domicile, I am subject to the laws of the state of New Hampshire which apply to all residents. That wording was not on the voter registration form that I signed, and as you can tell, the writing between my writing and the writing on the New Hampshire voter registration form are not the same, which means that I did not fill that form out simply because a government bureaucrat put incorrect information on a form does not necessarily mean that I have ever declared to be a resident. I maintain that I am not a resident of the state of New Hampshire, and RSA 259:88 says that if I claim residency in another state for any purpose, then I am not a New Hampshire resident, and I do claim residency in another state for a purpose, which means that I am not now a resident.
I can't take that into consideration because there's no evidence to that effect. There's no testimony to that effect. You asked me to take into consideration a fact that was not introduced during the course of the trial, so I can't take that into consideration.
I would ask, as the court did, or actually I believe it was the state in the case of the City of Keene v. Ian Freeman on a residency charge where the city actually wound up dropping those charges, I would ask the court to drop the residency. It was in this court.
In this court?
Would ask that the court dismiss the residency charge, and if the court sees fit, to place the vehicle registration charge on file.
Okay, thank you.
Briefly, yes, thank you, Ryan. Briefly, I'll address Mr. Perry's comment about Ian Freeman's case. I don't think it's relevant to what the court has to decide in this case. I will add that I did not cross those charges because I didn't have the certified paperwork that I needed in time. I was waiting on an out-of-state record.
I can't take your, I can't take the facts from him. Your facts weren't in the case either.
I know, I agree, but he just brought it up on an argument, and I just wanted to be clear with the court.
No, I can't, I can't take those cases are dismissed for myriad reasons, and that may be enough, but I can't take your reasons for dropping the case as part of the facts in this case.
And I would ask that the court review the relevant statutes, specifically RSA 259:88, resident. It's a resident shall be a resident of the state, defined in RSA 21:6, except that no person shall be a resident who claims residence in any other state for any other purposes. The court duly noted there is no testimony from the defendant or otherwise that he claims residency in another state, and certainly for not any purpose. Even if he did, there needs to be more than a bald-faced claim that he's a resident in another state, when all of the evidence that the court heard today shows that he's a resident in New Hampshire. RSA 21:6 defines a resident or inhabitant as, specifically it reads, a resident or inhabitant or both of this state and of any city, town, or other political subdivision of this state shall be deemed a person who is domiciled or has a place of abode or both in the state and in any city, town, or other political subdivision of the state who has, through all of his actions, demonstrated a current intent to designate that place of abode as his principal place of physical presence for the indefinite future to the exclusion of all others. I'm sure he has a South Carolina driver's license and an Arizona driver's license and a motor vehicle that has an expired Texas plate. It's clear by his own admission that the court has multiple interviews he's completed, which indicate he arrived in Keene, these are his own words, on April 4th of 2012. He's a registered voter in the city of Keene, and he has since 2012. He's affiliated with the Cheshire TV Board, New Hampshire Liberty Party. He's run for mayor. He's run to be a school board member. He's run, initially intended to be run for the ward moderator race. He has shown that he has goals for the city of Keene. He would like to be an active community member in this city, in the state of New Hampshire, for the indefinite future. I don't think there's any. It's crystal clear. This is where he intends to reside. For the indefinite future, to the exclusion of all other cities, and I would ask the court to find him guilty.
All right, I'll take it under advisement. I've got the cases and the exhibits here. And the certified Lever Street mailing address when the decision comes out for you?
That is a good mailing address. I would prefer 63 Emerald at box 369.
369?
Yes. And that's key.
Okay, thank you. Do we have another trial? Yours? Yes. Thank you. Time to set up.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.